All the latest on today's headlines, I want to go to Republican strategist and our very own Karl Rove, Deputy Chief of Staff to President George W. Bush. Karl, always good to see you, especially on an important day like today. You saw the president there. You heard what he had to say about Syria and the children that are being slaughtered there. Do you think he is setting the stage for intervention there? Are we going to act?
Well, if people were critical of President Obama saying something crossed the red line when the Syrians previously used chemical weapons, today President Trump said that it crossed several lines with him. So my suspicion is that our credibility is increasingly coming at stake. Previous to this, President Trump has been, let's say, not particularly excited about, dubious of military action in Syria to remove Assad, but events on the ground may be changing his opinion.
Well, you say our credibility is at stake. I would think if we don't do anything, right? But perhaps when he says things, as he did today, he's setting the stage to get Americans' head around the fact that we may have to do something. We may have to do something very soon.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, President Obama made statements like this and then took no action. I think President Trump has a feeling that our credibility is important. People need to know of our resolve. So when he says things like he said today at the news conference with King Abdullah, my suspicion is you're right. He is consciously or unconsciously preparing us for the possibility of military action to remove Assad from power.
Karl, let me ask you your thoughts on Steve Bannon and him being stripped of, his position there on the National Security Council and the timing of it all. In that Steve Bannon maybe had a reputation for being a little bit more isolationist, not necessarily wanting to get involved in all the world's problems. Could this be coincided with the fact that we are seeing what we're seeing in Syria? In other words, does he need him perhaps out of the way, or does Jared Kushner need him out of the way so that they can move forward and be aggressive in the Middle East?
Well, I thought it was a mistake to put the president's chief political advisor on the National Security Council to begin with. But what was interesting is the coverage of it, the news reporting on this, suggests that the reason that he was put on the NSC was to serve as a supervisor, as a governor, if you will, on Mike Flynn, the then National Security Advisor, and that the reason he's being removed now is that Mike Flynn is no longer the National Security Council, having been replaced by General H.R. McMaster. If that's true, that says something about how you had the wrong guy in as National Security Advisor to begin with, and you only put the political advisor on the NSC in order to supervise him. And now that he's gone, you can remove the political advisor.
That seems a little convoluted for me. That's why I'm wondering if there's something else going on here. Perhaps it's that there are people in that administration, perhaps, I don't know, Jared Kushner might be one of them, that feel that we, and Donald Trump himself, that we need to be more proactive right now in Syria. Yeah. And if others are reluctant, like Steve Bannon, again, I'm taking some guesses here, Karl.
Well, it could be, but I thought it was interesting. There's also a piece today by Dan Balls in the Washington Post, a really top-flight reporter, whose argument is that the White House made when they decided on the National Security Advisor, people prepared a list for President-elect Trump of potential national security advisors, and missing from that list was Mike Flynn's name, because there was apparently unanimity among all of the people getting ready to advise President Trump on his key White House staff, which you got to think included Bannon, that thought that Mike Flynn would be a disaster as NSC, as the national security advisor.
How do you wind up there?
Because President Trump wanted him there. So that all tends to point me in the direction of what the Fox News reporting, that Bannon went on there as a check on Mike Flynn, and now that Mike Flynn is gone, Bannon no longer needed to be on the NSC.
Let me turn to Susan Rice. Susan Rice.
Please do. Please do.
Look, this is someone, you want to talk about credibility issues, this is someone who suffers, obviously, in that department, given what we saw just with Benghazi and her narrative that she tried to spin about the film being the reason behind the Benghazi attack. Now she's trying to spin something. She says one thing on PBS a couple of weeks ago. She doesn't know what on earth anyone's talking about with Nunes, etc. And then just yesterday afternoon, she said basically, it was common practice to unmask names. I did that. So what's going on here? Why is she spinning two different tales?
Well, because she got caught. obviously when she was on television earlier and denied knowledge of, in Texas we call that the Mino Alamo defense. You know, I don't know what you're talking about. I had nothing to do with that. And then when it became evident that she did have something to do with it, she was very clever and I thought parsed her words. She said, yes, I unmasked them, but not for political purposes. Well, that means that she would have had to unmask them because she thought there was some intelligence value. That is to say that the American actor who had had incidental contact was somehow doing something inappropriate or wrong. Now, I don't think that my sense is that determination would have been made by the National Security Agency or the CIA or the FBI long before this information got to the National Security Advisor. And if there had been something that was inappropriate in those communications, they would have been on it right away. So it strikes me that that was disingenuous on her part. And she said, I never leaked anything to anybody. Well, the question is, does she know if somebody else leaked it? So you're right. She parsed her words. Her veracity is in doubt because of how she handled Benghazi. And now she's starting to suggest that, well, she's not made a final judgment. She's going to keep an open mind about whether or not she's going to testify to Congress. My view is if she refuses to testify to Congress, she ought to be subpoenaed because this is a very important issue. I cannot imagine the grounds on which a national security advisor could suggest that the unmasking the name of an American in this communications was vital to intelligence reasons when none of the other intelligence agencies had found it to be thus.
Good point. Karl, always good to see you. Thank you so much to have all your perspective. We appreciate it. Karl Rove, everyone.